Bridget, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Always a
Really
pleasure.
looking forward to this discussion about diversity and inclusion in clinical trials. First off, before we start, and want to talk about your work in this area, but talk first about what diversity and inclusion in clinical trials means to you. What's the goal? Sometimes we talk about different things when we talk about this topic.
Right. And so for me, I know that diversity, equity, inclusion is kind of like a buzzword now. But I really kind of like to approach it in a number of different ways because diversity is not just black and white. It's old, it's young, it's male, female. And so when we look at the lens of diversity, especially when it comes to research, it really is just, trying to find the treatments that work the best in the most amount of people. And it's really just that simple to me.
Now let's talk a little bit about your background professionally and some of your activities, because I know you're very visible and active in this area, trying to promote this diversity and inclusion.
Right. Yeah. So I'm a medical research professional. Been working in the industry for a couple of decades now. But I'm actually a health educator by training. And so, I kind of like to say that I kind of sit at the intersection of clinical research and health education. I really have found throughout my career that whether I'm working with, researchers, with scientists, with patients, with research participants, or just with my fellow colleagues, that really just having kind of like a core strength of education is something that I possess, and I really try to use that to just let more people know about research, and not only just about how it works, but why it's important, and kind of all of the great things that can come about from being able to kind of increase our knowledge of how to find treatments that can help to cure people, or help people live a better quality of life, with different health conditions.
I'm optimistic looking forward. You said a second ago, this is a bit of a DEI as a buzzword. It's like DCT or something. It's obviously an important issue. Sometimes there's a lot of talk. The FDA has passed that recent guidance, which many argue was a good step in the right direction, but it doesn't have a lot of enforcement teeth. It's not a lot of. It's more voluntary, if you will. But given that the current landscape, looking back where we were a few years ago, because we've tried to address this issue for many years with pretty limited success. Do you feel some optimism now in the next couple of years that we might actually change this situation for the better?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, even just for me personally, going back to when I was in grad school, actually, so many moons ago, my graduate thesis was actually working with a clinical trial called Eliminating Disparities in Clinical Research. And that was back in 2008. And we, combed through the Texas oncology statistics, and we were looking at the proportion of, different races that were having access to just, cancer clinical trials, which in a disease area like cancer, clinical trials really are the forefront of your treatment options if you have cancer, and a lot of other conditions it's not quite the same, or as serious. But even back then, 2008, it was very clear that we had a problem. So I am definitely encouraged to see strong steps moving in the right direction. However, like you said, the FDA diversity plans are still a bit of a black box. I've been seeing kind of recent signs, even just like within the last week or so, that, they may become more of a requirement than just optional. But, until we really just, move from it being kind of a trend and into really getting into why it is important to have, diversity in all of those areas that I mentioned, I think there's still going to be, sort of a nice to have versus need to have attitude when it comes to diversity. And that's really, I think, the shift that needs to take place to take us to that next phase of when we're actually going to be able to make actionable change.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I also want to applaud you for the work you're doing to help us make that shift. This is so critical. Really enjoy your time here today and your insights. And again, thank you so much for what you're doing out there.
Thank you, Michael.